Hello, everybody. I hope you hear me. It works. My name is Sofia, and I'm here to welcome you today to the webinar of the Meet the Coach series. The webinar is about to start now since it's 1 p.m. set. And today our colleague Pascal Papathemelis from the Finnish office is going to present to you about facilitation. The webinar is in English and we will record the session, so everybody who is participating today will get the recording afterwards. For you new to Agile 42, we are a global company present in 9 countries, and we do everything from work with leadership to culture, strategy, team coaching, leadership coaching. We keep trainings, etc. So if you have questions also about who we are, you can visit our website at agile42.com. Today we're going to use the Q&A for questions during the webinar, so please use this. We will try to answer the questions in the end of the webinar. If you have any comments, you can use the chat for this. The webinar will take 45 minutes today, and after that we will answer some questions, and all unanswered questions we will also try to answer in the follow-up email. The webinar will be in English, and please use all the chats and Q&As for anything upcoming during the event. This is all for me. I'm going to hand it over to Pascal so you can begin.
Can you hear me? I guess you can. So I will share my screen. One moment. So I guess you can see now my screen. So yes, the topic of today was getting started as a facilitator. And well, Sofia already introduced me. I'm an Agile coach at Agile 42. I'm mainly working as a team coach and personal coach. Special areas are Agile portfolio, organizational culture, and event facilitation. I've been in the Agile journey since 2005. And I'm also a member of the Agile Finland Association. And I have a long history as a project manager. So, how we do today? We start now. Some of those things Sofia mentioned, the language will be English. There will be no voice or video for the participants. Instead of that, you will need to use the chat for comments or the Q&A. We might have 1 or 2 polls during the session, and we will record the session. And then we will send that to you. Also, there will be email afterwards where we will then share the material with you guys. And in order to make things a bit easier, I will turn off my video so that then you can focus mainly on the slides. So I would like to know who is here, and for that I will start a poll. There are 4 options I'm going to give you. There would be like an expert. With the expert, I mean then a person who has been facilitating events and meetings and all the time, and he's kind of a master. And then there is also I lost the window. So there will be a practitioner, person who is facilitating frequently events, but might not be so much aware of the background. And then somebody who is trying out facilitation and has perhaps a meeting once a week, and then a beginner who is then facilitating a meeting every now and then. Seems that at least I have issue with creating now the Paul. So perhaps you can write a bit on the comments then, what kind of people you are. So we have some people who are practitioners, trying out once a week, beginners, getting started with Agile transformation, practitioner, beginner, trying out. Cannot see the poll, but yeah, beginners and trying out. Hopefully you can see at least the comments that come from everybody. So there you can get a good idea of who is here. Okay, so I guess most of the people are like more into practitioner or beginner state. And I will try to now take into account that during the presentation. Also, then I will also mention that this is mainly for facilitating events that are like physically on one spot. So not any remote facilitation, which I think is a bit of a different topic. If you have any questions, we can perhaps stay a bit later and then discuss about remote facilitation a few minutes. So I would like to hear from you related to the different events that you have been experiencing. What has been a good event? Where have you had, what has helped to have a good event, and what has been the reason of not having a good event from your experience? Perhaps you can write that in a comment with a plus for the good things and with a minus with related to the negative things. So we have somebody saying that it is pre-planned, clear purpose, instructed. Yes, so I will add those here. So it's like planned meeting. There is a purpose. Involvement by the participants. Yes, we have then people coming late as a negative thing. Phones, laptops might affect. Interruptions of other kind. Off-track discussions. Yes, try a bit to scroll a bit up. So no feedback, I guess also no decisions. Yeah, also if the facilitator has is not open to new ideas and has a predefined agenda that might be like not being neutral. Basically, I think the facilitator needs to be neutral. Also, on the good things, I would probably add things like the event and the environment is correct, meaning like we have a good good location that everybody can sit and everybody has a place to work. There is a structure, and perhaps also respect for all people. And of course, the things that we wrote, like no feedback, no decisions. If there is feedback and there is decisions, then that is also a good, positive event. Thank you very much for that. That was actually something to get you warm up. I would like to go a bit into the background. So what is a facilitation? The word facilitate comes from the Latin word facilis, which means doable or easy. And a facilitator is somebody, in other words, that helps people to do their work and achieve good results. The good facilitation includes a process, includes nurturing relationships. So normally in those events, we are doing something with people and people need to be active. And then also achieving results. As a metaphor, I could say that a good facilitator is somehow like a conductor of an orchestra, where he is helping and coordinating the people participating to achieve good results. He himself is not playing any instrument, so he's not making any tones, but he makes the whole crowd and participants to make great music. Or as a traffic policeman who helps the traffic to have a good flow and achieve the value that people who are moving in the traffic need to get. A traffic policeman also is not moving himself from place A to place B, but he is more or less standing still. So as a facilitator, normally you are having more as a neutral position, and your input in most cases is not a key to the success of the event for the content. Of course, it is key to get everybody else achieve results. Related to the process, normally it looks like this, that we have an idea. Somebody is having an idea that comes up as we need to do something. And we have some objectives, and then we go into a preparation. Some facilitator probably is nominated, and he's preparing the meeting. After that, when the date comes for the meeting, then he has, I would say, 5 certain steps. There is the opening, where you set the stage and welcome everybody and set the rules. Then you might be working in a divergent manner, collect data from the people participating, try to get the people get into a momentum to produce the things needed. Then in the middle phase, you're trying to improve the quality. And then at the end, you try to get some decisions. So you converge to a certain point and certain actions and try to have smart goals decided. If there are several topics that you want to discuss, then you will probably be going through those different steps several times for every topic that you're discussing. And at the end, there is a closing to make clear that the meeting is now ended. And of course, the facilitator and perhaps some other people have a post-work at the end, after the meeting and the event has been completed, in order to get the meeting successful. You can imagine that having a meeting and then not doing the things decided, that whole meeting and the whole work done before would be waste. So for the event idea, there is some person who has the idea. He thinks about some content. He might have a certain need, and then he thinks that having an event would cause certain benefits. And then at some point, there is a decision. This might be one or several people even discussing it together. And then they decide, let's do it. And at that point, it would be good to have a facilitator, somebody who will take the ownership of running through the meeting and the whole process. And then it starts that the facilitator starts the preparation. And this is one view I see as a preparation for an event. And those are the questions: what, why, who, when, where, and how. Any ideas what could be the what? So the what is basically the content. Content, what are we going to discuss about? And the why is the objectives of the event. In other words, what benefits we want to get out. And of course, who are the right participants? When, that would be like the date and time. Where, that would be then the exact location. And the how would be like the setup of the event. The rules and the moderation and the different techniques that would be used. There are events, for example, where there might be like just information sharing. Those would be run a bit differently with a different process than the events that are like for creating something concrete and getting some constructive things out. I hear that there is a bad connection for my internet, so I apologize for that. Hopefully this will be a bit better ongoing. So, and then out of those things that are here, those questions, those need to be thought thoroughly, and that thinking and preparation on those topics might not be only on the facilitator, but he might need to get input from other people. Basically based on what and why, and then also by the how. By that we then end up to have a specific agenda. A different view for the preparation can also be thought about what is the climate and the environment we want to have the event. So that would be like where, what would be a appropriate climate to achieve results, what conditions. So is it a noisy environment or is there something specific we need to take into care about? Also thinking about people's physical needs. So like toilet, food, breaks, etc. If you think about retreats or hackathons that might be taking even 2 days, there is quite important that there is the possibility for people to have a break, get some fresh air, move around, and not being like sitting all the time in this one location. Also, it might be important to think about the history and the background of the goal to be achieved. What has been done before? Is there something that needs to be taken into account? And perhaps also about the people. Is it the first time that people get together as a group? Do we need to take something more into account, or do they know each other? Further on, there is the logistics and the room arrangements. So what are the needed materials for the event, infrastructure? How can we best prepare the room to help the group succeed? For example, when my colleague Lasse is doing his trainings on Scrum and Scrum Masters, product owners, etc., he needs quite a lot of wall space to hang up the flip charts. So if there is no wall space, perhaps sometimes the meeting rooms are covered with curtains, those meeting rooms are not suitable. Or if you want to have teamwork, you might need to have smaller tables that you can put around. So the sitting of the people, what kind of tables you have. In other cases, you might want to have some physical exercise in the event, so you might need some empty space for people to do those exercises. So taking into account tables, flip charts, projectors, something I've seen quite often is that if people need to work with computers, you might run out of power cables. There is not enough power supply on events, things like that. Then, yeah, are all the members invited? Did we miss any key player? So those are kind of the logistics that need to be taken into account. Further preparation can be done, like what would be the rules of the sessions? In what spirit do we want to run the session? Have those been defined? Do they all the rules allowed for every participant to focus on the goal? If needed, can we change the rules and adapt as we go? And of course, the outcome of the preparation would be booking a room and people, having a clear agenda, and all the logistics ready and things working. So that was a few words related to the preparation. Then we get, after the preparation, the date comes when we have the opening of the event, when we have the event. And opening is quite key because it's okay to start on time. Its importance shows the importance of the meeting, respect for everybody, not using their time, and all things need to be prepared. So it's good for the facilitator to get in place sometime before. Then it's good practice to welcome everybody. In some cases, you might need to have a short icebreaker. So that creates a positive environment. Also, if there are new people, then it would be good to introduce the people and have some introduction round. So don't assume that people all know each other if they need to collaborate. So create a minimum of trust, because that would be making the collaboration among the people better, and that way the people will be able to achieve better results. Further on, then it would be good to review with all the people the agenda, go through every steps that are there in the agenda, different topics, give like kind of a target timeline. So that everybody knows what will happen and in what order. Present the objectives so everybody knows what those are, what we are targeting, why we are there, and is aligned with the objectives. And if there are certain rules to be set, ask for confirmation of the rules. If needed, you can at that time also adjust the rules. Also, it's a good practice if there are certain volunteer roles, or if there is required to share something private, then to allow the person to opt out, so to pass. In our trainings and workshops, we ask people then to write a sticky paper, a post-it paper, and write pass on that, and then stick it on their chest. Then everybody knows why the person is being more passive. And then we normally also agree that the person is not supposed to be passive and totally opt out from being a participant, but the person can then observe the rest of the people, and perhaps we might ask for his comments from the observation. And yes, a key thing is to encourage the participation of the people. So it would be good to observe the level of their attention and ensure that everybody can contribute. And for a facilitator, it's quite important to plan the observation, to be aware of that, how people behave. for that, it is quite important to be active in the listening, observe body language, and observe who is silent, in what way different people contribute. There might be, you can then utilize techniques that everybody can contribute. And once there is a good flow established, then you can go back to the background and let the people work. And I would like to ask you, do you know of any things that you might be using if people are not actively participating, how to get them participate more actively? If you could write that in the comments. So let's check in the sessions, ask the person, yeah? So directly address the person. Facilitation techniques like me, we, us. Yes. Try to include the person. Smaller groups, yeah, group work. Sometimes it is easier for people to be more active and speak up if there are smaller groups. There is like role play. Put the person in a different situation. Then it might be easier to speak up. Yes, if there is time to give time to think and brain writing and asking ideas. So something I do on that often in my workshops is I ask people to fill out post-it. So by having those post-its, then everybody can write something down if you ask for everybody to have a post-it. Or ask them to produce something else, like a drawing. Yes, there are also other things like you might include everybody's participation if there is, for example, a need to make a decision with dot voting. Or you can ask them to present their opinion with a fist of 5. So having like the 5 hands, the 5 fingers, and then 5 is something very important or you agree very much, and then 1 is that you disagree or it's less important. So that can also help. And of course, for that, the idea is that everybody needs to reveal the hands at the same time. Similar to planning poker, where everybody needs to reveal a card. That's also something that is used in estimation. Or then having simply a thumbs up or thumbs down, both that comes at the same time. And I guess there are probably many other ways how you can encourage participation. Certain key things that are there quite important to have a good event is like following the agenda. The facilitator needs to keep an eye and mark the progress. So making things visible during the meeting helps for the flow and the creativity. of the people, but also people also are more aware of where you are. And then if needed, update the time and the content. That comes a bit with experience. If there is an important topic and there is a sense that we are just before the breakthrough, perhaps it might be worth dropping some other less important topic in the agenda and spend more time on the most important things. Also, planning the agenda might be good to leave slack time so that you can allow to have adaptation in the agenda. That comes a bit with experience and the facilitator toolbox to know when to hurry up or slow down, or then perhaps even park the topic. So if, for example, people quite often get into details and get dragged away, then there is no detailed decision making. So don't allow to go into details. This might not interest everybody and might get more easy out of focus out of the topic. So it helps to stop the detailed discussion then and encourage to stay into the objectives. If needed, then the topic can be parked and then it can be put in action that then less people will discuss that later up, or then there would be a follow-up meeting. Then there would be seeking commitments. So if you are like having a topic that has been discussed and there is some kind of conclusion, it might be good to have a concrete commitment like thumbs up from everybody. That helps to give a closure to the topic. It helps in continuity sign towards the session, and helps perhaps also having the focus on the greater goal. And perhaps even if there is some action, make sure that everybody has something to contribute to the next meeting. Something I mentioned before, facilitator can be flexible. The main idea is to focus the group to achieve the goal. So you might need to change the rules, and you might need that you are like less in the background and let the people discuss. Or then jump into certain situations inside. For that, I would like to say an example. I once was facilitating a 2-day event, and we had quite much planned who would be the right people to come there. And then there was a group of people that was really into very good workflow and working to achieve good results. But they've been working for 2.5 hours without a break. And then when I realized that, then I forced them to have a break, get something to drink, or then, that we walk to the cafeteria all together so that there is some blood circulation going on into that, to the people's mind, and then they can continue on that. Even I forced people then to have lunch together. Of course, I've not been a dictator, but I've been kindly asking that and trying to get their commitment also to know perhaps it is a good time for a break. And finding the right spot, how much you let loose to have creative ideas developed by the people, and how much you need to stop them to go outside and have a break. That also comes, to my opinion, has come with experience. When I was a beginner, it was more difficult. Now it goes more automatically after having facilitated many meetings. But it might be good also for beginners to then set clearly in the agenda to have a break. One key thing is when you are discussing the different items, then to bring clear closure. Before moving on to the agenda, that would give the people a feeling of progress. Then it will be also clear for them on what item we are discussing. So there would be no confusion. In some events I've seen that people have been in items that were like 2 points back because they missed some points or they have been playing with their computer. As I said before, explicit closure would be like also as confirmation with thumbs up before closing the item. And if the agenda is also visible on some wall, in my workshops, I often use Post-its for every item, and then I have a Kanban board so I can move the Post-its from to do, doing, and done. And normally I have only one item under doing. That helps them visualize, and people can know how much is still left to be handled. With Post-its, actually, it's also very easy because you can also reprioritize things. Easier, move them up and down based on the priority. Often that is also something that the priorities might change during the meeting. And of course, respect everybody's rights. Try to be neutral and help everybody be present. And as a facilitator, you should be like a role model. So it starts even by the logistics. If the facilitator needs to order even snacks or food for the group, to also take care about people who might be having certain allergies or being vegetarians. And don't interrupt people who are currently perhaps contributing or presenting something, unless the rules are violated or going out of topic or others cannot follow. And in that case, it would be good to recall the rules. And often there's been situation like quite common. It is, for example, on the daily meetings where then many people talk on top of each other. And then there might be, for third people, might be difficult to follow the discussion. So then it would help to have a physical item that would be like the talking stick that would visualize who has the right to talk. And then you could kind of move with the talking stick around, and then you move the order of who's currently talking. Yeah, one thing I wanted to also say that might help during the event is to visualize things. Visualization helps the understanding of people. So whiteboards and flip charts might be very good. For example, I've been once in a meeting where I was more like an observer of the meeting, and people were discussing some technical items of which I was not so much an expert. But I had the feeling after 25 minutes of discussion, we were still somehow circulating and things were not clear to me. And I had the feeling other people had the same feeling. So then I took the initiative and jumped in as a facilitator and started asking questions and drawing on the whiteboard. And that activity helped pretty much because then we got into a conclusion within like 5 to 10 minutes after I jumped in. And I did not contribute myself to the content except of facilitating the visualization of the topics. So visualization is key, although you might see my drawings might not be very nice. It still helps, better than nothing. Then going towards the end of the meeting, it would be good to summarize all the results that have been achieved, all the decisions, and perhaps also summarize the needed things to be followed up. If there are action points for people, try to make sure that those actions decided are like SMART actions: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely bound. So every person knows exactly what needs to be done. So that also helps the group realize the progress and the achievements that have been achieved during the meeting. And also ask them for a final commitment. Will you do that? Do you have time? After the meeting, of course, it would be good to write an email summary that then would help sharing the knowledge and keeping the knowledge stored for everybody. One very important thing is to thank the participants. So this is important to do whatever even has happened in the meeting, because people have taken the time to join the meeting, and then also helps for the contribution then further on for the next meetings. And actually, it would be good to, at the end of the meeting, to ask people that is there anything else left, and make it clear that nothing else is left to be done. If people start leaving at different times, sometimes this also happens, and then there is the danger that things might be discussed in subgroups. That's not good, because then there might be own dynamics evolved in the subgroups, and that might be that the event did not fulfill all the expectations. There might be good to have a closing exercise, like having a round and everybody gives his feedback or has some appreciations. There are different games for that. And then you can, for example, ask two things. Return of the time invested, like from a scale from 1 to 5. That would give feedback on the objectives and the commitment. And then also feedback for the facilitation. Thinking about feedback is a gift, and don't assume. Accept even the not so good feedback. Next time you can be better. Yes, and after the meeting, I left it on purpose open. What needs to be done? I'll mention a few things, but I would like to get now your input on that. So if you can write in the comments, follow up on actions, yes. Better to have meetings of minutes, yeah. Meeting minutes written. Follow up on actions. There is one thing that actually very often is forgotten, that the facilitator needs to do even before leaving the meeting room. What would that be? There is a question like, is the facilitator's job to follow up on the actions? Depends. It might even be decided that somebody else is doing it, or even somebody else can write the meeting minutes. But I think it's the facilitator's responsibility to make sure that there are meeting notes, if that's needed, and that there is a follow-up, and perhaps even a follow-up email. Oh, yeah, there is that one I was thinking. Clear the room for the next meeting. Yes, clean up the room. So things I'm doing would be cleaning up the whiteboards and flip charts and all those that are like cleaned up. There might be even confidential information in some events. So it would be good also from security purpose that those are not just lying around. Coffee mugs, all those things that might be left there. Chairs that are like, I have been working in a team where there was two people always just stood up and pushed the chair at the back, and then when that team left out, the meeting room looked like a mess chair-wise. So I was going around and putting all the chairs back. So leaving the room the way you would like to do, that's the first thing. Perhaps taking some documentations before you're taking flip charts out or things like that, like making a picture, that might also. Yes, documenting and confirming any further works to be done by people who volunteer during the event. Yes, and it might be even agreed that certain people do a certain follow-up and inform the rest on a certain time. Depends on how the meeting is done. So I think I'm now ready. Thank you very much. Hopefully this has been interesting for you. Thank you for the participation and the active comments. Before closing, I would like to get from you feedback. Fist of 5. Has this been useful for you? That would be a 5 if it's very useful, and 1 if it was not very useful. And of course, now people can see what other people have written, so that might not be the best because the first ones can influence the rest. Unfortunately, the poll, I could not get it working while I've been sharing through my tablet. So something to look up for the next event. Okay, and then we have questions. So let's start to have the questions.
Yes, this works really fine. We have one question from Sharna. The question is, how do you jump in and visualize a technical discussion when you don't have the tech expertise in that area? Can you give your response to that?
Yes. In that example I've mentioned, it was done so that I've been going back to basics. You can draw a square and write the concept inside and just ask the people to explain things more clear. One technique I have often is that I might even go further more into being a more basic person. I might fake up that I don't know things and ask the questions so that other people hear about that. That would be the suggestion from my side. You can draw a circle and arrows from right to left, or write a list. Just kind of visualize things. That helps then having a bit more structure into the discussion. Hopefully this answered your question.
Super. Do we have any more questions that you would like to have an answer to? Here's one more question. How to facilitate so that everyone is free to speak whatever comes in mind? I mean, how to bring openness into the meeting?
The openness in the meeting can be done, for example, by there was the example that was put before that there was having a drawing, asking everybody to contribute, making it so that it doesn't feel that somebody at one is having to talk in front of everybody, but collect many ideas, and perhaps even ask for any idea is a good idea. There are no stupid ideas. And now you can see me again.
Then there is also another question from Kurt. Who writes the meeting minutes during the workshop when the facilitator has his hands full?
That can be something that is agreed beforehand with somebody, or it might be one of the first topics that is agreed in the beginning of the meeting. Now we need to write. And sometimes if teams might know that there is a rolling role responsibility for the facilitator, for the one who keeps the notes. There are different techniques on that.
Thank you. And there is Mr. Andrea also asking a question. What are the key things you can do to facilitate remote meetings?
On remote meetings, all the objectives need to be there and all the other things I mentioned here, but then you get also into the problem that you might not be able to see the other people. So it is a bit more demanding job. Technology needs to work. Unfortunately, today the technology with me did not work that well. I had a weak connection. So all those things might affect. It will be quite helpful to have tried things out beforehand and be more clear on your instructions of how to run and what are the rules. It needs to be more concrete and more clear to everybody. Perhaps a better visualization or making more strict rules that might help. And those remote meetings also, what helps a lot I've seen is to have tools where people from different locations can collaborate on the same document. I've seen that to be very useful. Having, for example, a Google presentation or a Google document or some other system where many people can edit at the same time, that is very useful.
Thank you. It seems that we do not have any more questions at this time, but we still have a few minutes if you want to pop in a question. While you're thinking about this, I can just quickly remind you that the webinar has been recorded, so you will get the recording afterwards, so you can share it around and watch it again. And also, if you want to reach out to Pascal or to, for example, the Finnish office, so we can support you further, I will put now in the chat also the contact details for us, so you can just reach out if you get questions also afterwards. There is one more question coming, so we're waiting for this. The question is how you facilitate a meeting when participants have different languages. Interesting.
Facilitation of the meeting when there are different languages. You need to have a common language to be able to communicate. How would people, even being in the same location, communicate if there are different languages? Visualization would be the same for everybody. Pictures, everybody would understand. I would try to go more into that. Perhaps then you need also to have a translator. Somebody who is translating things. Yeah, and also be aware that not everybody speaks English the same way. For most people out there, English is it's not the mother language, and even English people might have a total different pronunciation. So taking into account also the culture, things gets into play there.
This was great. Now I don't see any more questions here, but feel free to reach out to Pascal. I put his email address in the chat. You can reach out to Finland. You can check out our websites if you want to have some more information. So we're happy to help you out. And then we also have the online coach clinic where you can go and book a meeting with one of our Nordic coaches. I will also put the link in the chat so you can book your slot there. Feel free to use this time as well. The coaches are there to answer any of your questions and support you. So yeah, otherwise I think time is a little bit running out. From my side, thank you for joining today. It was nice to see we had a lot of participation again and active also in the comments. That was very, very nice. And I hope to see you again on March 13th when our colleague Simon will keep the next webinar. Check out the meetup groups and sign up for them already today. Thanks from my side. Over to you, Pascal.
There was also one question if the slides will be available. Yeah, actually there are not slides on the tablet. And I've been using Notability software with a pen to draw and write. It was an experiment from my side to see how that goes. It needs perhaps also more experience to do it better. And the slides I will export a PDF of those, and then you will get the PDF with the email. That was the plan from the beginning. Thank you very much. Wish you a good Friday evening, and also have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Ciao.